Alright guys, welcome back. This is day 2, from nothing to something. My journey as an independent music artist to go from nothing to something. Today I'm just going to go a brief overview. I got a lot of housework to do and stuff. I got a brief overview of my current gear that I'm working with, and my skill set, what I'm able to do, and the things that I'm a little bit lacking and things that I'll have to learn how to do. Once again, this is on a very tight budget, so I don't have money to pay professionals right now. I won't be able to pay somebody to mix something or master something for me. So I'm going to have to figure that out, maybe Lander or something like that. In the beginning, that's how it's going to have to go for me. A lot of you might be in the same situation as me. Can't dish out a bunch of money for all these extra things. Even the thought or the cost of the actual release through DistroKid or CD Baby or any of those things, even those fees might seem like a lot if we have a bunch of songs to release, and we're going to have to save up just to get that whole thing going. When it comes to my gear, over the past decade or so, I've compiled a good amount of stuff. A lot of it does a trick. Some of it is good, some of it is not so good, but I got to make do with what I got. For example, talked about this before. This is my guitar. It's an $80 Rogue guitar from Amazon. It does what it needs to do. It's not the best. Doesn't have much resonance or anything like that. But hey, I can't afford a Martin. Like, I won't be able to afford a Martin in the near future. So make do with what you got. And when it comes to gear, there's instruments. There's a cutoff where it matters in terms of quality. If you can get the job done and it sounds good, and you could fix some things with like your, say it's an electric guitar, your amp tone, or post-production or anything like that inside, if you're working with a computer, DAW and stuff like that, it doesn't matter so much. Some of the best, most of my favorite guitar recordings of all time were made in the 40s or the 50s. Technology wasn't up where it was. Some of these people had like guitars from Sears Roebuck, and they got it done. And they got it done better than most people get it done when they spend $2,000-$3,000 on a Les Paul or something like that. So you work with what you got to a certain degree. I mean, maybe some people out there can go and buy the best gear, but I can't, and I know a lot of you can't either. So you do what you can with what you got, and then you'll get better with it. And it's like having a handicap against you, but that'll force you to get better using what you have. Now, there are exceptions to that rule. This is a bass I got from Amazon for about $60 maybe, and I needed something to lay down bass tracks on some of the recordings I got, and it does not cut it. Okay, like, it doesn't do it. Like, I've had a few tracks where it sounds good enough, but like, there's no tone to it. It doesn't have much. The levels that come out of it are really low. Maybe I could preamp it or something, but like, it doesn't cut it. So I have to save up and get, maybe a $200 bass. We'll figure it out once we get to that point. But other things I do have, I do have, like, this is an old Yamaha piano. Some of the keys are stuck a little, but you plug that into MIDI, and then I'm using not Pro Tools. I'm using Logic, and there are plugins and stuff like that where you can make it sound like a real piano. So that's good. Those are the ways around it. A hack that I'll make a whole video on is, if you are using Logic or Pro Tools, or Pro Tools, by the way, is like, it's subscription only now. Like, they milk you for the rest of your life. It's insane. Like, you can't just buy a program and be done with it. You have to subscribe to it for the rest of your damn life. Like, it's evil. So maybe some people use Pro Tools, but I'm not I'm not for that whole thing, and I think that's the way the world is turning, unfortunately. But listen, we'll get to the actual DAWs, or if you're using old school technology to record, we'll get to that later. But one hack that I have is actually it's an electric drum kit, and you hook that up through MIDI or USB into your DAW, and then you can pick and choose different drum kits that they have, like software drum kits, It actually sounds really good. The only exception is the hi-hat does not sound real. So what I do in my hack, to get good drums without having to worry about like buying 10 different microphones and like learning the science of drum kit recording and stuff like that, mic placement. To me, it's an expense. I don't even have a drum kit right now, like an actual drum kit. So it's an expense, and it's also an expense of time and learning and knowledge if you don't already have it. That I don't think it's worth it. So for me, an electric drum kit plus a real hi-hat, and that's the kicker right there. So you could have an electric drum kit going plugged USB and recording live, and then also through your audio interface plug in an actual like SM57 or 58. I forgot what the skinny one is. Right on an actual live hi-hat. So basically you just have to get a budget electric drum kit. Maybe if you could afford a little bit more, but electric drum kits are really cheap these days. They're like 100, 200 bucks. For me, that's not cheap right now, but that's something worth saving up for if you're doing your own drums on your recordings. You run it live through the USB, and it goes into like your software drum kit, so you could pick and choose and tweak the sound and stuff like that. And then you have a live hi-hat going at the same time. So you're recording it through your regular microphone, and you're getting a sound of a real hi-hat, because that's the one thing about these drum kits, the electric drum kits and software drums. The hi-hats don't sound real. There's usually not many options of like, if you want to open the hi-hat just a little bit more, there's usually just like a closed setting, a completely open setting, and like a halfway setting. There's nothing in between usually, and it just doesn't sound real. Basically, you run that live and you mix it into your electric drum audio software sound, and it sounds really good. Basically, the one problem that sucks with electric drums right now is fixed by doing that, and it's a really cheap way to do it. If you have a good sounding hi-hat, or even a decent sounding hi-hat, and a cheap, run-of-the-mill $70s, $80 microphone, just any of the Shure ones, or I don't know. I'm sure there's other brands that do well with that type of microphone. Then you hook it up at the same time and you mix it in, and it sounds like a real drum kit. So that's my hack for drums. I don't have it set up right now, but when I have it set up, I'll make a video about it and show how to do it. It's pretty simple, but it gets the job done for real. It really does. I have, as far as electric guitar, I have one electric guitar right now. I think it's a Fender Stratocaster, which is kind of my workhorse. It does the trick for me. In reality, what do I sound best on? I sound best on probably a Telecaster, maybe even a Les Paul. I used to play with in my teenage years. But Les Pauls are expensive, and it doesn't quite fit the sound that I'm going for. But I sound very good on it because it's like Les Paul's like guitars for babies. Like it's just so easy to play. You press a button, you press a fret, and the note stays forever. You don't have to do much with it. Great tone. But Telecaster actually, and they're a lot more affordable. I'll probably eventually get one. But me on a Telecaster with a little bit of distortion and stuff, I sound very good with that, and it's just comfortable for me to play. So eventually maybe I'll go back to that Tele, but when it comes to all the recordings I gotta do with an electric guitar, it's gonna have to be the Stratocaster for now, and I'm happy enough with it. Let me see what else. I got a good amount of microphones. Luckily, through a friend who had a studio. We used to be in a band together, and he had a studio, and he had they couldn't pay the monthly thing anymore. He has a real life going on with like children and like a very demanding full-time job. So he just basically lent them to me indefinitely. So that's been a great help. So I have options to choose from. What was my starting microphone for like vocals, and great for acoustic guitars. I mean, I think a lot of people have experience with the Rode NT1 or NT1A. So I had that for a long time, and it got the job done. maybe it's not the best for my voice or whatever. It sounds great on, acoustic guitars, I think. Maybe it's not the best for my voice, but I think a lot of that has to do with what we'll get to later, is my skill set of EQing and post-production and all that on a microphone track, on a vocal track. So, microphones, you should have like a good enough one, like a nice condenser mic. But when I say nice, I'm talking about like $150, $200. If you really want to go crazy, $500. This whole idea of like, oh, I can't record this track until I have like a Neumann or whatever. Like, it's I can't do that anymore. Maybe some people want to waste 5 years of their life or 2 years of their life or all their income. I don't think it's a waste necessarily, but if it's holding you back from actually putting music out, then that's a problem. And that's kind of the main point of what I'm doing, and what I'm, maybe helping you do, is you find what is sufficient to get the job done. What is sufficient? What is the gear I need sufficiently to get the job done? Maybe not the best. If you're waiting for the best gear, then you'll be waiting to release anything. Okay, so speaking as a broke musician to other broke musicians, you can't really wait too much longer. There are some things, okay, like my bass, it won't cut it. When I have to lay down bass tracks, I gotta lay down the money and find a sufficient bass. But usually, like, if an $80 guitar can get me really good, acoustic guitar tracks, and it's just more about your playing than it is about the actual quality of the instrument, then you gotta work with what you got and keep the ball rolling. When it comes to what I record on, so I started out recording, like, in the fondest memories I have of recording were actually those old Tascam Porta Studios. So I think the first one I had was a little blue 4-track one. But then I found, or I think my brother found it, one of the gray one. I think it's maybe technically 8 tracks, or maybe you gotta bounce the tracks around. I'll make a whole video about it. Right now I have it like gutted and opened up, and I had to replace a belt and stuff like that. I want to get it back to its old glory, and I want to actually start recording on it again. But the Tascam Porta Studios, that's where I began on, and it's nostalgic to me. It's, I guess, what you would call lo-fi. But that's the thing about lo-fi, and a thing about gear in general, right? There's whole bands who became legends, like Guided by Voices or whatever. Like, they became legends with purposely trying to sound lo-fi. You know what I mean? They had the money to have really high quality recordings, and by I think the late 90s or early 2000s, they started like recording some of their songs like, in proper studios with proper production and stuff like that. But they became, legendary underground musicians and DIY musicians by sounding DIY. And sounding DIY you could do for real cheap. So like I said, I started with the Tascam Porta Studios. I found this at Goodwill for $6. So this is very tempting because I could sell it on eBay for $500 easily, because this is the Panasonic solid state reel-to-reel recorder that's actually in the movie Evil Dead. Like I said, if I need money, I could sell this for $500 in a couple of days. This is super high in demand. I found it for $6. I go to Goodwill a lot, so it's a mix of luck and being there at the right place at the right time. So it actually still works. I haven't quite recorded on it, but what is really cool about this, and like I said, I'll make a couple of videos on this once I start actually doing stuff with this. It has this old microphone in it. So I can get it out without breaking anything. It's a little mic stand as well. There's this old little microphone in it. I got it wrapped up in the wire. But it actually sounds really cool. It sounds really cool when you put it in there. So I got some reel-to-reel tapes I'm going to have to tape over and do some recordings with it too. But I'm also going to test out running it tapeless and having the audio out go straight into a digital recorder and see if it gives you like an interesting character to it. a lot of people say that that's a waste of time and stupid, but I'm gonna find out for myself, and I'll post a video on if that's stupid or not. Um, so we got that going. So that'll be for recordings that are pretty bare bones, you know. Trying to go for like an old folk sound or like old, like, you know, Smithsonian records or whatever. I would just do that with one microphone, you know, singing while playing guitar at the same time. Like, because I have some older folk songs that are inspired by, you know, Woody Guthrie or something like that. So I think I'll use that for that type of stuff. And we'll see how that goes. But in general, my main thing that I'm working on is I do have an Apple. Not everyone could afford an Apple. I got it during COVID money. And it turns out it was the worst generation of MacBook Airs ever, it seems. So it was good timing, bad timing, whatever, you know. So I have that, and from day one, it like overheats like crazy, and the fans get super loud. So it's not, it shuts down. It can't really handle real load. I can't do any video editing on it. And doing like a big project in Logic really pushes it. Really pushes it. So, but I've got to, and I've made a lot of recordings through it, and like I have a bunch of recordings, like I said, that are 70 to 95% done. So it's a MacBook Air, and I run through Logic, so that's what I'm using. And then the audio interface, I think I had the Scarlett for a long time, which I think everyone starts on. The Scarlett, it did the trick, for real. So the Scarlett, the red one, and then right now I'm working with an Audient, because I heard it's a little bit better or something like that. I upgraded multiple years ago. I don't know if I needed to upgrade or not, but I'm using the Audient. I forgot the name of it, but basically you need, anyone who's starting out and wants to do this through computers and stuff like that, you're going to need an audio interface, and you're going to need your laptop, and you're going to need your DAW software. And there's a lot to choose from, maybe like a handful to choose from. You already talked about Pro Tools. I hate the fact that it's a subscription, so fuck them. What's the other one? If Fruity Loops, or I think it's FL Studio now. There's a bunch. There's even bare bones ones, like free ones like Audacity. If you're really just doing like multi-tracking, you know, like you could find a way without spending $1 on software. And the software, it's usually not that expensive. I think Logic was like $100, something like that. I don't know what FL Studio is. There's a few others that I don't know the name of, but it all depends if you have a Mac or a PC. You don't have to get a Mac. I think they're overpriced, and I think you get more power out of a PC. I just started my projects in Mac, so I kind of got to stick with it for a while, even though the Mac I have is not really reliable. Like, it's to the point where I had people over recording tracks on it, and you know, the recording would stop halfway through, or it would crash. So that's what I'm working with, but you know, like I said, I'll get the job done with that. Now, when it comes to skill set, maybe I'll keep that for another video, but just a straight overview of the skill sets I have. I could do a recording, I could do a multi-track recording, I could mix it all right, but I have severe lacks in knowledge, I've noticed. We're talking about just EQing in general, with vocals in particular. Making vocals sound like they belong to the mix. I'm not great at that. I'm not a great singer or anything like that, but there's some points where recordings just don't sound right, and it's not necessarily my singing performance, it's the way I mixed it, or the way that I EQ it. I think of like Smashing Pumpkins, you know, like that guy's voice is almost comically bad, but it still fits in the mix. It still sounds good in the band setting because it was mixed properly. So if a guy like that, or a guy like Bob Dylan or whatever, could have recordings that sound really good, my voice is not necessarily that bad. It's just the fact that I'm not great in mixing that voice or EQing that voice or making it sound like it fits in the mix and making it have that cohesion. So that's definitely a skill I have to learn. Like, a lot of times I was using presets, um, like vocal presets in Logic, and I realized that that was not the way to go. That's actually put me into a lot of dead ends when it comes to recording projects. There's a lot of songs that I put a lot of work and a lot of time into it, and it just doesn't sound right. And I think a lot of the reason is because I was putting preset upon preset, and it doesn't sound right. And you gotta learn how to EQ your vocals to match your voice and to match the song and all that. So I it's a skill I have to learn, and it's a skill I will learn, and that'll be part of this whole year process. So, but yeah, so that's don't fall into presets too hard. Maybe your voice is so good or your performance is so good that no matter what presets, it's always going to sound good. For me, it's not quite the same. It's not quite working like that. So I have to learn how to produce a little bit better, EQ a little bit better. Compression, like a compressor. I know technically how it's supposed to work, but I don't know how to work the knobs to make it do what I want it to do. And then that would only take a couple days of trial and error and watching YouTube tutorials and stuff like that. So I got to put that work in, because right now I just have a vocal track, right? And when it gets too loud, I go and bring down the volume of that 1, 2, 3 seconds, and doing that too much, it's not the right way to do it. It's not the right way to do it, and I know that, and I have to just break through the comfort zone and learn how to do these things. Learn how to EQ something, by myself, not trusting on a preset, and learn how to use a compressor, learn how to do all these things, learn how to, I put reverb on individual tracks, and then I find out in the end I really should be sending those to a separate track, so that your reverb is touching every single track, but it's the same sound, same reverb, as if that helps it make a performance sound like it's coming from the same room. These are things like effects sends and all these like technical things that exist in the old school mixing boards as well, but also exist in your DAW. These are a lot of skills that I need to learn when it comes to the actual recording and getting a recording that sounds great. Now, am I ever going to get to the point where, like, I want to get a mix, the mix is good enough or even very good? Am I ever going to get to the point where I try to master things by myself? Probably not. Partially because people talk about mastering like it's some crazy science and you need the perfect room and the perfect equipment. Maybe that's true, and they talk in an intimidating way about it, but maybe they're right. Maybe they're right. Maybe there is something special or something that I can't quite do myself with mastering, but I can't really afford to master each song from a professional either. So there is things like Lander, which I hear some people talk crap about, and I hear some people say it's great. So I don't know. I'll find out. But in the beginning, I'm going to have to probably, when it comes to budget concerns, I'll probably have to go the Lander route. And eventually, when money starts coming in, then maybe I could afford to actually pay a real mastering engineer or a real mixing engineer. So I could get my mixes like up to 90% great, and then somebody comes in and fine tunes the rest. In the beginning, like I said, as broke musicians, we can't always afford that. Okay, the costs pile up to the point where we can't do it. And we're working jobs. We're working 2 jobs. We're doing this on the side when we're fucking tired at the end of the day. So it's tough enough to do it with energy. Now we're talking about the pocket now, we're talking about the funds and stuff like music, any type of music or video production or whatever. Like, there's an endless amount of shit you can buy. There's an endless amount of shit that people try to sell you. And then you get in this mindset where you need it and you can't go forward until you have it. Even just making this video, I'm doing this on a camcorder, literally a camcorder from the 1990s, because I don't have anything else. My cell phone doesn't even have space on it, and it's like a crappy budget cell phone, because I don't have an iPhone. I can't afford an iPhone. I don't have whatever. So, I just can't keep waiting until I get the right gear. And I suggest you don't either. It's really, you'll be waiting forever. Because like I said, there's marketers and there's YouTube videos who have these fucking stupid links in the bottom, and they get a cut of the money that if you click on this Amazon link, affiliate marketing and stuff like that. So they're trying to convince you and tell you, hey, you need this thing. You need this thing. You cannot succeed if you don't have this thing. And I'm trying to make this channel to tell you what you actually need and what you don't. And I'm going to find out for myself as well. But sometimes if people telling you you need this thing and you can't go forward without it, and then they say click the link in the bottom to go and buy that thing, well, they're getting a cut. So can you really trust that? No. Are they going to be promoting things that they don't believe in? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that they're disingenuous, but they're trying to make a buck as well. They're trying to make a buck. And it could be good stuff, but do you really need it? It really depends on what you have. Like, there are things you will need, right? If you're going to record on your computer, you need a computer. You know? Simple. It doesn't have to be a $2,000 computer. If it does, and, good for you. But I don't know what that feels like. And you might not either. So, like, if you get a budget, I got like a Lenovo ThinkPad. I got it for like $300. But it has 2 or 3 times the RAM that my MacBook has, which was way more than $200 or $300. But it has more power for less price, and it's used, and it's working just fine, and I'm using it for video editing, Like, you got to find ways around it if you're really working on a budget the way that I am. And then you also have to know what is worth it, what is necessary, what's a want, and what's a need. Okay? If you're making acoustic guitar music with singing, folk music or something, you don't need a Neumann microphone for $3,000. You don't need it. You want it. But you need a guitar. You need a microphone. And you need a place for that microphone to go, either into an old school. Like I said, we could do this real old school and have like one of those digital workstations, that are separate, like a Tascam. Well, Tascam is analog. Or they had digital versions back in the day too, like Korgs, I think, or Zoom made a couple as well. You could do that, or you need to run that into a computer through an audio interface. And the audio interface, you could get the Scarlett. Start off even the older version or whatever if you want. Like, if you really have like only $100 to spend, you just need a place for that microphone that you're recording your guitar and your voice into, to go from the microphone through the audio interface into the computer and into whatever software you're using. You don't have to spend $1 on software. If you want, you can do like Audacity, which is free and stuff like that. It's no bells and whistles on it, but you could multi-track stuff. You could EQ it. You could put reverb on it, whatever. But it's very bare bones, nothing fancy. Like, if you really have no money to spend, it could be done. And then you need to spend money on a microphone if you don't have one, and an audio interface, and then learning the skills afterwards. And there are budget microphones that could do it. I mean, a lot of great albums have been recorded with SM57s and SM58s, which are like $80 a pop. I think they've been the same price for forever. eBay, don't sleep on eBay. Don't sleep on eBay at all. You can get stuff for below the market price, and those old Shure microphones last forever. So if it's used, it doesn't really matter. There are ways to do this, and we are going to do this. So when it comes to gear, don't separate your needs from your wants, right? Separate your needs from your wants. Don't fall into the trap of, okay, I can't move forward unless I have these thousands of dollars worth of equipment. It's not true. Even if you're starting out, if you have a guitar and if you have your voice, or if you have a piano or a digital piano, you'd have to get a MIDI to USB cable to plug it into your computer to be able to get those sounds that sound a little bit more real than an actual digital piano sound. But there are ways to make it sound really good for really cheap. We'll get a little bit more into it down the line. I just wanted to make this video. Maybe it went a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but I have to do some drywall and rewiring downstairs, and we'll catch up later. Thanks for listening, and keep going for it.